Today I want to talk to you about how to make money with big data, machine learning, and AI, and the 5 crucial things that you have to do to make that happen. The game that we're playing, let's say this is your marketplace. Let's say that you have customer segments, lots of different segments, right? And you have information or data on those people. You can put pixels on the ads and drop cookies on their computers and find out who's visited your Facebook page, who's visited your retail store, track their phone locations, and see who's clicked through on search terms and responded to your email, or maybe even bought from you. There's lots and lots of data. But what we want the computer to do is we want the computer to figure out who is valuable and who's a dud. Okay? We want the computer to sort through all this stuff and learn the recognition patterns and predict who's going to be worth keeping and worth marketing to and who's worthless. Okay? That's the game. And this game goes back 150 years at least. In the old days when I started, not quite 150 years ago, what we used to do is track mailing lists. We used to mail individual lists, and we used to keep very close track of how they did. And by doing that, we could get an idea of what our market was about and who was worth contacting and who wasn't. Simple, right? Okay. But when computers started coming into play, people weren't even sure if computers would apply to marketing. I remember going out to Gurney Seton Nursery and seeing boxes of their packing lists. And I said, if you keyed these in, you could track customer behavior. You could see who was valuable, who had bought multiple times, and who had only bought once and was just a joker. You could start sorting out the behavior. We used something called recency, frequency, and monetary to value the customers. Well, as I started speaking more on this topic, the Hudson Bay Company in Canada had us build a marketing database with 14 million customers and 250 million transactions on a PC. Everybody thought it was impossible. Well, we managed to pull it off, and then they said, well, we'd like some models. So we were really excited. We built a model about who bought travel packages because they sold a whole bunch of stuff. And what we found was that the only people that bought travel packages were the very valuable high credit limit customers. So we came back to them and told them that. And they said, oh, that's great, except what we do is we promote to everybody, and if they're interested in a travel package, we raise their credit limit so they can afford it on their card. You see the problem? It was circular. There was a correlation, but it wasn't causal. In fact, it was the opposite. It was circular. So what we realized was that we needed to understand a dependent variable. It's called labeled data. It's a data set for learning, okay, for figuring out what's going on. When Watson, the IBM computer, played Jeopardy, they gave it 25,000 questions from the past so that the computer could start to learn what was a right answer, what was a wrong answer. Does that make sense? In all AI, we need a labeled data set. When they want to teach cars to drive down the street, they show them millions of pictures of cars and pedestrians and bikes and buses. And the computer starts to see patterns in that. Okay? So you need a labeled data set to make it work. What was our labeled data set? We took the database and we moved it back in time. We knew who got promoted to, and we knew who responded. We mailed to the house, and we shipped to the house. So there's a correlation there, too, through time, in time and space. Why do I talk about mail? Well, the reason I talk about mail is because mail has the highest level of engagement, even far higher than mass media or even social media, because you have to deal with it when it comes to your house. You have to open the mailbox, you got to get it out, you got to look at it. Okay, so mail gives us the best laboratory. So companies like Wayfair, who started in purely.com, have now expanded. Even Amazon did a toy catalog last fall, right? So if you're not considering mail, you really imagine a mailer in the 90s who wouldn't consider the internet. Well, now the tables have turned. You need to consider mail because mail gives us the best laboratory. Okay, because we can figure out what's going on. It gives us the best labeled data set. Okay, so the first step in getting your marketing to work is you got to have a good labeled data set. Okay, and that builds a dependent variable. Now, when we started, we just kept track of who bought and who didn't. You know, these bought, these didn't. Okay, these didn't, these did. Okay, we just kept track of that. But I knew that some people bought a big, or placed a big order, and some people placed a small order, right? So we started grading their behavior, and then we included profitability. Because one of the criticisms of some of the stats tools is they're just giving us a probability. No, we got to take it right to profitability, so you know exactly the kind of decisions you're making, right? So we work harder at our dependent variable than most. That's the first point. The second is then we take a computer tool and we look for correlations. We deconstructed for the Hudson Bay the PRISM clusters, and so we built geodemographic variables by postal code. Now we use the census long form data. We add about 150 variables for that, and we add about another 100 behavior variables for your customers. Okay, so we have a very rich environment. The trouble is you can't make sense of it. For that, we use the machine. We use the machine learning. Okay, we let it sort through the variables. But there's some problems there too. The car that stopped so faithfully at a stop sign, there was a case study where it stopped 140 times at one stop sign, and then somebody put a sticker on it, and all of a sudden it didn't think it was a stop sign anymore. Machines are only as good as their programming, and they don't know what makes sense in the real world. They don't know what variables. It doesn't bother them. It's a math thing, you know. So the second step, we let the computer sort through the variables and throw out the ones that have no correlation. But then the third step is we have this old guy who's got 25 years of experience in this, and he adds human wisdom, and he actually watches what the computer's coming up with. But then there's a fourth step. Because we're working with relatively large numbers, we can take that first mailing that we backed up to, and we split it into two groups. We let the machine play with one half of the promotion, and then we take the model, that's the ranking, it's the segments and the definitions of the customers, and we apply that to the other sample. And we see if the variables perform in the same manner. That's the fourth test. We do about 20 validations for every model that we deliver. Now, fifth, and perhaps most important, we worked with musician's friend, owned by a Guitar Center, owned by a venture company in the Middle East, and they didn't like the idea of a catalog, and they were always testing, trying to get rid of it. They tested us 11 times with 8 competitive modeling companies. The last one was the stats faculty at UCLA. And they accused us of cheating because we won every test, and the last one we won by 321%. And I have a letter that shows that. Finally, they wanted a local vendor who they'd worked with before, and so they told us, well, you know, we've had enough. We back tested against your model, and we found this other modeling company can do as well as yours. I didn't at that time didn't know what a back test was. It wasn't something we did. What a back test is it stops at the second step. It stops at the second step. It lets the machine pick the variables. The advantage of a back test is that the machine picks all these tweaky little weird variables that give enormous value to the model on paper. But the old wise guy knocks those out. So ours might even do a little worse in the back test. But the question is, how does it do in the real world? Because that's the only place it matters. So I got a call about a year later, and they said, did they test against you? I said, no, they just did a back test. And they said, yeah, that's kind of what we figured because the results have gone to garbage. Those are the 5 steps. You need the data. You need the machine. Sort it all out. You need the humans to keep an eye on things. You need the validation to keep an eye on the humans. And you need to put it in the real world. That's the art of machine learning. And you do it over and over and over, and we all get smarter. I'm John Miglosh. Give me a call. Bye-bye.